Thank you so much for joining. This is my very first talk at DevOps. This is my very first time at DevOps. So I'm super excited. I know that this is the last session of the day. And if I were to say that, AI is changing the way we work, AI, it's no longer about coding, I'm sure you all are going to roll your eyes and say, yeah, tell me, something different that I don't know, and something that I haven't heard through the day. I'm sure you have heard 100 times how AI is changing things. So what I've decided is to approach it in a very different way and go to the zoo instead. So can you raise your hands if you have been to a zoo? I'm sure. That was a trick question. I would be surprised if you haven't. Now keep your hands raised if you have timed it around the feeding time of the animals. Oh, perfect. There are some people like me. Good. There's something exciting around that time. You know the animals will show up. There is some sort of excitement, anticipation. You feel something dramatic might happen. Now you might be wondering, why am I talking about... Wait, hold on, didn't work. Should it not work? Yeah, okay. Now you might be wondering, why am I talking about zoo at this conference? Now let's take a little detour and visit the zoo. It's feeding time, and the one animal that you don't want to miss is the lion. So let's head straight to the lion's den. All right. So here we are at the lion's den. The zookeeper is feeding the animal. The lion is very eager to chomp down the meal. He looks very majestic. But at the same time, he's very calm, he's very relaxed, there's no struggle, there is no hassle, there is no chase. He's used to being fed. Now, let's take our lion and transport him magically to the wilds of Africa. Ready? So now, here we are. Our lion is in the wild in Africa. He still looks majestic, but now he is very confused. He's very perplexed because it's feeding time and there is no hand to feed him. He doesn't know what to do. He's so bewildered that there are deer grazing behind him, but he doesn't know that. He just doesn't pay attention because he is so used to being fed, his instincts are very dulled at this point. Now you might be wondering, why am I talking about a nano banana generated lion at this conference? I told you this is my first talk. So I have taken all the creative liberties that I can possibly do. Before I tell you why I'm talking about this lion, let me introduce myself. I'm Madhura Chaganty. I work at Elliptic as engineering manager. I'm writing a book on foundations for keeping AI responsible. It's still work in progress. Another month or so, it should be out. Now, I started writing code back in the time when COBOL was still very much in use and Y2K was the problem. Now, many of you may not have heard about Y2K. Some of you may not even have been born at that time. So let me explain you what is Y2K. And this was the real time when everybody thought that the world would come to a standstill. Banks would stop working, insurance agencies might fail, and it was all because of the two-digit year field. Because at the stroke of midnight of 2000, the year would become 00. And you wouldn't know it was 1900 or it was 2000. So any calculation that was based on the year field, whether it was interest rate calculation, life insurance expiries, and everything would just go wrong. And it actually at that time, it felt as if the fate of the civilization depended on those people who knew how to fix that problem. So who could go through millions of lines of code and manually fix it. I had that superpower at that time, and I still have it because I can fix y to y. So that was the time. Since then, I have worked with multiple technologies. I started with .NET at one point when it was introduced, moved on to ASP.NET, then it was C# for some time. I have designed scalable systems using REST API, SOAP protocols, and in the last decade or so, it was mostly the AWS architectures, serverless, event-driven, SQS, SNS, everything, whatever you can think of. So one thing which is common throughout this timeline is anytime I had to pick up a new language or pick up a new framework, there was a lot of struggle involved. I had to read manuals. I had to read the documentation. A lot of trial and error involved. You could just not jump into something and get it working. Bringing up the server itself was a big thing. You had to try out a lot of things. And eventually you would get comfortable with something. You would get an expert at some levels, depending on how much you want to struggle. Then came the era of Stack Overflow. How many of you know Stack Overflow? Good. There are some people. So things got somewhat easier, somewhat better, because there would be some brave soul out there who would have tried different things, who would have looked at documentation and come up with a solution. They would post it on Stack Overflow, and you had the opportunity to look at the solution. But not always things worked, because we had the problem of works on my machine. So to get it working on your machine, you could not just call that engineer and say, hey, fix my problem, but you had to struggle. And then eventually you would get things working. Now we are in this fantastic era where whatever the language, whatever the framework, we have the coding agents. Sorry, I have to bring AI back. And it could be GitHub Copilot, it could be Cursor, it could be Claude Code, or it could be Kiro, whatever. You name it, you have it, you can use it. And things have become much, much more smoother. So now I'm engineering manager at Elliptic, and I work with three very diverse teams. One is very product focused, one is into innovations and AI, and the third one is into DevOps, the deep dive into Kubernetes. So I don't get as much time as I would love to doing hands-on coding. And of course, I have FOMO as well, because my team is doing agents, everybody is doing agents, so why not me? So I picked up Cursor, came up with this agent, multi-agent, quite an ambitious plan. I should have started with something simpler, maybe one agent, but hey, why? Why start small when we have AI, right? So picked up Cursor, started with the plan. Initially, I looked at Google ADK. Didn't work as expected, or maybe I wasn't using it properly, whatever. And then I jumped into LangChain. Everybody's using it, why not? It was very simple. I had to just tell the agent, I want to move to LangChain, and things were better. I started planning, prompting, writing skills, instructions, and it came to a point where it was so easy. All I was doing was explain it, try this again, refactor the code, tell me this. And it got me thinking, why do I even need the keyboard that we traditionally use? Maybe I just need this keyboard, because, that's all I was doing, right? Explaining, fix all, try again, refactor. And whenever I come to the stage where I can deploy, all I have to do is commit and pray probably at that point. And then when this was happening, obviously, life is not that simple, right? there was a bug in the system, things were not working, and I was clicking the fix all button over and over again. And I realized that the agent has gone in a loop. It's bringing back the lines of code that, probably 4 or 5 iterations back I had seen. And that's when the real panic struck me, because I had no clue, absolutely no clue what files have been generated. There were 20, 30 files, or something. I had no idea what the structure of the code was. I didn't know what the functions were, which function was not working. And I felt like the helpless nano-banana generated lion in the wild at that point, because the deer would be grazing behind me, and I'm just waiting to be fed, because I have no clue what the code was generated. So this is me, 25 years into the industry, learning the hard way how to learn a new language or a new framework. And I'm come to a point where I'm just using this keyboard, no idea what the code is. So if this is me 25 years down the line, what happens to the engineers who are just entering the industry or are new to the industry, or any engineer in general, right? So what are the signs of domestication? So as I said, I have taken creative liberties out here. So the first one is the glaze stare. You might find yourself, I was in that situation, staring at the screen. The agent was doing all the thinking, searching, analyzing, and lines of codes were being generated. I could see the code, but I had not paid attention. I was just blankly staring, hoping the agent was doing its right things. That's the glaze stare I'm talking about. The next one is copy-paste reflex. You might be brave. You might say, oh, I am not going to use the agent. I'm going to wipe code my way throughout. Fine. You might write really good prompts, really good suggestions to the chatbot, and then come up with really good logic. You test it, it works really fine, you copy paste into your code. You slowly do this 1 time, 2 times, then you start getting this false confidence. Everything is fine. You start abstracting the prompt, and that's when the problem starts, because you now are blindly copy pasting. And the third one is the helpless debugger. If you are in state 1 or state 2, you might find yourself very quickly in this state 3, like I was. Because I was asking the question, does it work? Does it work? But I wasn't asking the right question. I was in this curiosity trap. And I had seen the code being generated, not paid attention. And when the agent was stuck, not able to unblock itself, I was completely helpless. So that's the helpless debugger I'm talking about. Now, what do you do when you see these signs of domestication, whether it's within your team, whether it's within yourself, or people around you? And you go wild. So this is my framework for building judgment, confidence, and deeper thinking. Because we know that AI is around, AI is here to stay. But how do we actually keep, how do we actually keep our engineering instinct sharp? And that is what this framework is about. So let's just quickly go through each of these letters. The first one is W, welcome friction. Now, you might say, oh, we have been talking about developer experience, avoid friction for over a decade. Now, why am I talking about friction? I'm not saying slow down your CI/CD pipelines that your engineers pull their hair. What I'm talking about is deliberate friction. You might have improved your onboarding documentation to extremely great levels using AI and whatever the tools that are available to you. But is there a time in the onboarding process where the engineer can read the documentation, experiment, or are they just going to go to the agent and say, give me my first PR? Because your time to the first PR, that metrics you're tracking on the dashboard, might be really fast, might be really exceptional, 1 day, 1 hour, 1 minute. But has the engineer understood what they have done? So that's the friction I'm talking about. If there is a bug in the code, instead of just clicking fix all button like I was doing it, take time to look at the problem and understand what your options are. You know your system better, and then suggest it to the agent who can then unblock itself. It does two things. One is the agent is able to unblock itself, but you own the fix because you know what option you suggested and what option worked. So that's about welcome friction. The next one is investigate the why. I was asking the question, does it work? But the real question to ask is, why does it work? How does it work? Or is there any room for improvement? We have code reviews already in our ways of working. We need to be asking the right questions during the time. I'll give you a very simple example. Might not even happen in real world, very simplistic, but I want to drive the point across. If I'm doing a code review and I see a line of code which is validating an email address on a user object, pick any language, user object dot email address is valid, is null, whatever. The line works. Does it work? Yes, it does work. But the question to ask is that the right place for that line? The agent might have put it deep down in the service where it's actually writing into the database, just before that. But from all the engineering experience we have so far, we know that the validation should be done when the input was received. And that improves the network latency. That is going to avoid your network traffic. And it's going to not let the user wait there because of that round trip that is going to happen. So those are the kind of questions we need to be asking during code reviews. You might see 10s or 20 objects being created all over, but we know our design patterns. Does any of the design pattern fit, whether it's singleton, whether it's factory? Those are the kind of questions we need to be asking during the code reviews. So that's about why. The next one is limit the feed. Now here, I'm not talking about starving your AI engineers of AI at all. AI is good for us. AI helps us deliver at speed. I don't have to tell you why we need AI. But what we need is at least some time during the day when there is no AI. No AI so that the engineers have time to think, to design, to be curious. In my team, we have 1 hour every Thursday as an open mic session. So the idea is anything the engineers have learned, doesn't matter, junior, senior, whoever, can just come on these sessions and talk. The format is free-flowing. It can be brainstorming, it can be whiteboarding, it can be just a plain discussion. But the idea is that the engineers have time to design a system, to think about the problems and address them, rather than just saying, okay, let's just implement, create a ticket and fix it. So that is the idea behind limit the feed. Oh, sorry. The next one, and the last one, is debrief the hunt. Now, I'm not going to ask you to raise hands, but I'm sure in the last week, you would have had at least one production incident. I think so. I'm not going to ask anybody to raise hands. It's not a name and shame session. But I'm sure there was a production incident somewhere. And after every production incident, we have a postmortem. We do wash-up, saying that, OK, what was the problem? What went wrong? What can be improved? So a similar retrospective we need to be doing when AI is generating the code. During normal retrospective, we ask, OK, what went right in the sprint? What went well? What went wrong? Similarly, when AI generates either a very elegant solution or a very sloppy one, or anywhere in between, we need to be asking these questions. What went into the planning? What was the skill that was used? What led to a really good solution, or what led to that slop of code that now we have to fix later? So these are the kind of questions we need to be asking during a retrospective. So what do we do for our teams now, going forward? We build the habitat. Now, AI is helping us ship much faster. We have AI in our SDLC cycles. Code is no longer the bottleneck. Code is just the means that we have been hearing since morning. What we need right now is systems thinking. It doesn't matter if it's a senior engineer, it's a junior engineer. Everyone needs to have a systems thinking. Looking at a bigger problem, breaking it down into smaller features. How do we design systems properly? Because right now, whatever code you generate, whether it's AI, your own code, the AI agents are going to build on that. Good code begets good code, and that's where we are heading. So we need our foundations to be really strong. We need to think about architecture, all the edge cases, any innovation that needs to come from us, not the AI. The next one is curiosity-first culture. Now, we have this ability to think. We have an ability to design things. Innovation, as I just said, needs to come from us because we have got the brains. AI is supposed to be just helping us deliver faster, implementing, taking the mundane out of our everyday life. So that's what it needs to be, and our engineers need to have that time, the space for exploring and being creative and curious. And the last one is own the design. We need to own the design. It's not AI, it's not the agent, it's not, because at the end of the day, it's our systems. We need to be maintaining them. We are going to be accountable for what we put in production. We can't be saying that, okay, this was a problem, AI did it, so I don't know about that. And that can only happen when we own the design, when we have spent time thinking, was it the right implementation? We know our engineering principles, whether it's dry, case, we have design patterns. All that we have, over decades and decades, we have gathered that knowledge. And suddenly, just because AI is coming today, maybe AI will evolve. I don't know what happens few years down the line or even few months. But we need to own the design at this point because we are going to be accountable for what goes into production. And if you see in the background, there is that lion. Because we have built the habitat now, the lion is very happy in the wild. So to recap, why the W.I.L.D framework, W is for welcome friction, experiment, own the fix, investigate the why, review the pattern, question assumptions, limit the feed, design first, stay curious, debrief the hunt, which is retrospect, learn from failures and successes. This framework is not about rejecting AI. It is about building the instincts that we already have, but making sure that we are keeping them intact as we are going forward with AI. So deliberate friction helps us build judgment. Guided exploration builds confidence. And curiosity will help us keep the deeper thinking that we already have. So now, what do we do for the teams? What do we need? Because in the long run, teams that thrive won't just be fast, but wild, with curiosity and creativity, and we need to own that design going forward. So thank you for listening. I hope you had enjoyed it. Thank you so much. So.